John Nichols was giving a reading and a book signing for the Empanada Brotherhood. And I went and I bought a copy of the book, and I went up to him and I said, "Mr. Nichols, you damn near ruined my marriage." That got his attention, and he kind of looked at me and he said, "How's that?" And I told him the story. We were at Brodsky's Books, and he said, "Rick, get this guy a copy of Conjugal Bliss." And the inscription inside to this day, it says, "Clint, good luck with your marriage." I've done it 3 times. John Nichols. Tonight we're lucky enough to have John Nichols here reading for us. John Nichols. John in the house.
He's lucky I didn't ruin his marriage by sleeping with his wife. I published my first novel, The Sterile Cuckoo, when I was 24 years old. And I just published this book called The Annual Big Arsenic Fishing Contest when I'm 76 years old. People always ask me, how do you find cows? And I said, well, just turn south at Fort Garland. This book, The Annual Big Arsenic Fishing Contest, is about a 20-year fishing contest between 3 idiots. One of them is named Yuri Stone, the other one is named Bubba Baxter, and the narrator doesn't have a name to protect the innocent. And the book is not just about fishing, and so I'm not going to read the fishing parts here. But they have an incredible time on the river for 20 years. All 3 of them are professional writers also. And mostly they argue, and they grow old, and then they die. Except for the narrator. So I want to read a part of this book where the narrator meets one of the women that he's going to be in love with for a long time. Now, I came very close, where did I put those? Okay. I came very close to losing the annual Big Arsenic Fishing Contest for the first time in only our 3rd competition on October 3rd, 1985, when I snapped my rod tip 20 minutes into the afternoon. By the way, this takes place between Little Arsenic and Big Arsenic up in the Wild River section of the Rio Grande River. When I snapped my rod tip 20 minutes into the afternoon and nearly defaulted the match. That year, Bubba was only 33, Yuri and I had celebrated 45. I was working on 2 screenplays. I'd recently published my 5th novel, and I just married my 2nd wife, Rachel Ivory, an intriguing and no-nonsense person with an IQ off the charts. We'd met over the summer in the war-torn country of Nicaragua, which was fomenting a Sandinista revolution that was being harassed by a Contra Army counterinsurgency supported by Ronald Reagan's right-wing autocracy and the CIA. While on a brief film-oriented research tour there with a small group of lefties supported by a Los Angeles Jesuit council promoting liberation theology, I collided with Rachel, a journalist on assignment for NACLA. We initially came face-to-face, crouching in a trench on the Honduran border while being debriefed by an FSL and colonel on the guerrilla Contra War situation. I'd call it lust at first sight, no doubt heightened by the surrounding atmosphere of heroic revolution, leftist nation building, a pending United States invasion, and the bristling array of loaded AK-47s guarding us. Back in the USA, I visited Rachel for a week at her San Francisco apartment. Then she passed 5 intoxicating days with me in New Mexico. 3 weeks after that, over a long-distance phone connection, I importuned her to marry me, and she said yes. I don't claim to have made a whole lot of rational decisions during my life, and that certainly wasn't one of them. I'm not being disingenuous here. Reason had nothing to do with our rash decision. Perhaps we tied the knot because the phone sex was great. I loved the sound of her caustic voice, and she considered my edgy sense of humor adorable. Our complementary radical politics stoked the flames. My older daughter, Stephanie, observed, "You are so out of your comfort zone, Dad." She was 16. My other daughter, Naomi, asked, "Am I going to have a stepmother who's younger than my sister?" She was 12. Their mother, Gretchen, who worked for a pottery barn operation in Albuquerque, featuring popular hand-thrown porcelain vessels that reproduced John Keats' immortal Grecian urn for the gift shops of many art museums back east. About Rachel, she kept, "Mom, what good would it have availed her to kvetch about her ex-husband's prodigious immaturity?" I'm guessing that Rachel and I fantasized marriage would be like bungee jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, locked in fevered coitus after smoking a couple of joints and dropping 4 tabs of Al's. Obviously, we weren't thinking straight, but not thinking straight is an amazing turn on. It's so exciting to be out of control, acting impulsively on the blind spontaneity of sexual excess and the untenable lunacy embraced by swearing to cohabit together forever, which may be the most cockamamie concept humanity ever invented. Believe me, we were both enraptured by the provocative luminosity of melodrama and its total lack of self-restraint. Just writing about it propels me into an irregular heartbeat. Rachel was thrice divorced, the mother of 2 almost grown teenage boys living in Alaska right now, gill netting salmon for competing boats. During her prior existence, she'd been a movie critic for the New Orleans Times-Picayune, the manager of a San Antonio art gallery on the Riverwalk, a special ed teacher on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and a painter of diorama backgrounds at the Sam Noble Natural History Museum in Normal, Oklahoma. I know. Needless to say, between marriages, there had been other men. Rachel came with baggage, and so did I. She was 5'6" with green eyes and faintly strawberry-colored hair, a wiry body from working out, riding a bike, jogging, hiking, swimming at the gym, and a languid aura radiating off of her that captured me with an invisible physical embrace that is difficult to describe and was impossible to resist. She reeked of manic energy and erotic lassitude simultaneously. I was 6 years older than Rachel. 4 years later, autumn of 1989, it was me crying uncle as I fled from Rachel Ivory, burned out, impotent, my tail tucked between my legs, my heart locked in atrial fibrillation, my doctor's getting rich. I was 49 years old, maybe fatally ill, also fearing for my career. How could marriage be so degrading and confrontational? Rachel had taken me out back to the woodshed and delivered a proper whopping. I don't want to delve into it, but just for the record, I'll reveal that over the previous 4 years, I've been in an unprecedentedly volatile relationship akin to Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath, except I was the one ready to cram my head into the oven. Don't get me wrong, it takes 2 to tango, and I got to admit I was a jerk. I should have been more open, more sympathetic, more sensitive. Sadly, my problem is I've always had a bad habit of waking up aghast when the infatuation wears off, compulsively asking myself in terror, where am I? What now? Actually, forget that baby talk BS. Just once I should summon enough courage to override my jealousy, my deflated ego, my broken heart. Rachel actually threw me out of the house because she deemed that I had total disregard for the sort of compassion needed to release a kind of vulnerability that is required to build true intimacy between a man and a woman. There were feminist hegemony issues. You are such an uptight cad, she accused repeatedly throughout our tempestuous 4 years together, spent constantly at loggerheads. Why can't you understand the difference between passionate codependency and unselfish affection? I can't believe you stuck one of your ex-husbands, I shouted back at her. It didn't mean anything, she yelled. I was just feeling bored. Love is not defined by erections. You don't own me. Then for 20 minutes she spewed at me invective originally coined by Betty Friedan, Susan Brown, Miller Angela Davis. But we're married, I sobbed, mortified. We promised to be true. I am true, her scalding tongue insisted. True has nothing to do with genitalia. You act as if tenderness is illegal. Screwing like banshees doesn't prove anything. Lust is fun, but it's not forever. If you would honestly give yourself up to me like an adult, I'd respond in kind, but I can't stand your ornery, obsessive desire for total control over me, you country bumpkin. I will not be a submissive puppy in your patriarchy. I beseeched her not to be that way. I knew what I was losing and I couldn't bear the thought. I had become a prisoner of her typhoon. Anger is an aphrodisiac. I went down on my knees, a puling figment of my former self. The background music was our maladjustment threnody. Sex can only carry two people so far, Rachel said. Then they should begin using their cerebral aptitude, and not merely to protest the SNL bailout or the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Your so-called brain is still crawling through the muck of the Precambrian, and it can't even breathe oxygen yet. Get out of here, stop clinging to me, I can't stand your irrational cupidity. I don't understand what you're saying, I cried. You call yourself a journalist, but you can't even handle words correctly. Tough titty, she'd already slammed the door. Jump cut another 4 years to 1992. Why did I buy a new house? Because I'd lost my former digs and an acre of irrigated land to Rachel in our divorce. Then the landlady in my 2-room rental apartment gave me the old heave-ho because I rejected her amorous advances, a convoluted bummer that I prefer not to amplify here. You mightn't believe this, but of late I'd gone celibate, hoping to somehow entice Rachel back for more. I'm not sure how to explain this implausible behavior. A harebrained measure, I know. What sort of tortured reasoning concludes that chastity equals seduction? Perhaps we clashed with each other like two vandal warriors brandishing broadswords and spiked iron maces attached to the end of chains. Yet our perpetual bewildering contretemps had imbued me with a sexual delirium and emotional codependency that I know somewhere is defined as anarchical burning love. And I could not quit myself of it. To be sure, the story of our big arsenic fishing contest bears no relationship to such a tyrannical obsession, hence I won't dwell on it. Nevertheless, I found it impossible to whitewash Rachel from my mind. She was my Donnybrook, my Battle of the Bulge, my Dresden firestorm. I clumped about in a broody mode, whistling melancholy dirges. Almost every weekend I casually drove by my old house, longing to catch a glimpse of her out in the yard, watering a hollyhock, or perhaps in just her bra and panties, hanging freshly laundered sheets upon the line. If by chance we happened to meet at the post office, I smiled at her, sickly no doubt, and Rachel nodded at me coolly as we chatted about the weather and whatnot. That woman possessed demonic restraint, fiendish indifference. For 1, 2, 3 years she had allowed absolutely no connection to pass between us. Who knows how she accomplished that? I myself ached for her so badly I'm surprised I did not suddenly haul off and whack her with the right uppercut in front of Uncle Sam's postal clerks and all their papers. My older daughter Stephanie said, "Give it up, old man, you're running in place, you'll never win the race." My younger daughter Naomi said, "Pop, you should go to a proctologist and have your head examined." My girls think they're funny. It's a genetic blemish inherited from guess who. Their mother Gretchen wisely withheld comment on my situation. There was no need for her to verbally dig my grave since I could accomplish that very well myself. Gretchen and I maintain a distant but civil relationship, all for the sake of our girls. Anyway, enough already. I purchased the cheap shack that required all my savings left after the divorce and put me in dreadful debt. Rachel, the once radical journalist, come special ed teacher, come museum diorama artist, had now become a successful local therapist and drug counselor, raking in the shekels hand over fist. Misery loves clinical sympathy. Understand? I'm not hollering foul play. You can't blame your life on anyone else. As soon as Rachel swiftly earned a master's in social work, she obtained certification and licenses in family and addiction counseling, then aced all the relevant national and state exams, whereupon bipolar, heroin addicts, and suicidal mortgage brokers began knocking down her door for help. She also led popular group sections for adult children of alcoholics. The local grapevine informed me that Rachel excelled at marriage counseling, anger management, child abuse, battered women, and transformational guidance, whatever that is. She was on the board of Community Against Violence, aiding a wide range of disparate personalities who were dearly helped by her insightful empathy and wisdom. Strange as it seems, my second ex had a real gift. Now how could I compete with that? Not for ages had I spotted Rachel around town with another guy. This fact sort of gave me hope. Could she be suffering too? On one occasion I bumped into her at Smith's, accompanied by a bearded young stud pushing her shopping cart. But he turned out to be her youngest gill-netting son from Alaska named Willard. When Willard shook my hand, he almost broke every bone. Her other son, Maynard, was doing time in a Cordova jail for firing an AR-15 at a rival salmon boat in Trinidad territory. Both lads were a couple of hotheads like their mom. Me, years later, I had celebrated my 56th birthday 2 months earlier, at the end of July, and I could display a scar from my throat to my belly button to prove it. Don't ask, I'll tell. Although this is embarrassing, I may as well fess up. I had already been remarried and re-divorced for the third time in my life since our 1992 Big Arsenic fishing contest. Sounds loopy? It's true. Who did I marry? 3 guesses. The first 2 don't count. That's right. Rachel and I were drawn back together like Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, like Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo, like the Dodgers and the cursed Yankees long ago during the 1950s World Series clashes. Suddenly, she and I had collided again, and we couldn't keep our mitts off of each other. It started this way. I phoned her office to make an appointment for counseling. She asked, what's the problem? I said, I'm depressed, I can't get motivated, I'm lethargic, I'm drinking too much, I'm in a tailspin, I need help. You and everyone else, she retorted coldly. See a shrink, get some Prozac. I need help from you, I wheedled. Rachel harumphed. You're out of your mind, I'm a professional, I'm wise to you. I pleaded, but you're the only person who understands me. Yes, unfortunately, that's true, she agreed. And for that reason, I wouldn't touch you in my office with a 10-foot pole. I assured her I won't break any of your precious client-therapist rules. She pointed out, the fact that we're even having this phone conversation is compromising my client-therapist rules. Then who knows why? Her demons, my demons, ghastly serendipity, but she made an appointment with me. We had not spoken intimately for several years. Yet 5 minutes into our session, we began groping each other against her desk. And 20 minutes later, we finished our unexpected collision in a noisy clatter of rapturous exclamations while grappling on the office shag rug, thus breaking all her rules. You son of a bitch, she hissed. I've missed you terribly, I gasped. You don't deserve me, she snarled. I can't live without you, I groaned. Okay, Rachel said, abruptly as calm as the eye of a hurricane. But I don't want to live together. You crowd me and you're out. I need my own space. Me too, I echoed euphorically, proving that human emotional complexities and libidos are unfathomable. Question, how can it be that I mysteriously cajoled what I wanted from this upscale, morally committed, rational, responsible, respectable, and even-keeled feminist icon? Answer, you can never tell a person by their public persona. A week later, we completed our blood test, purchased the marriage certificate, and said I do before a magistrate judge. It was just her, me, the judge, and his doddering secretary who'd been with him for 3 decades. We had conscripted 2 witnesses from the lobby, the chubby guard who checked everybody through a metal detector, and an off-duty cop waiting to bail out his ex-son-in-law jail for failure to pay 8 months of back child support. Rachel had dressed up for the occasion in jogger, Nikes, and ankle socks, aluminum-colored exercise shorts, and a t-shirt with a Smokey Bear logo. We planned to go running afterward. The judge said, "Ma'am, did you please remove your gum?" Rachel had woven her blonde hair into a long braid. She had a good tan. I could picture her as one of the players on America's World Cup women's soccer team. Healthy, athletic, and with the sharply alert eyes of a peregrine falcon. You had to really keep a close watch on Rachel to surprise her looking drowsy, usually only around the time of her period, which was ending with menopause or after sex. Otherwise, she appeared 10 years younger and ferociously alive and arresting, like a maid who could have passed for Joan of Arc centuries ago. Intimidating, regal, sensual, and somewhere in there, part of her great seductive charm, alluringly childlike. Shirley Temple meets Jacqueline Bisset. Rachel was always catching me off guard, and that being part of her personality gimmick. I never knew when we woke up together if she'd nestle snugly against me needing sex, or hop out of bed, grab a cup of coffee and a glazed donut and be out of the kitchen door before I even realized that her foot had hit the floor. Over the next 3 years, our frenzied intellectual broadening led to emotional exhaustion, extreme jealousy, finally preordained betrayal, and down we twirled again, spectacularly in flames. During that hysterical epic, I almost died of endocarditis. Then I segued into congestive heart failure, suffered open heart surgery, they stitched an annuloplasty ring to my mitral valve, and next, for good measure, I underwent a double hernia operation, divorced once more. Never again, Rachel and I pledged in unison to each other as the divorce papers were being signed, and we sealed our vows with a final spasm of carnal excess. At least this time around, no houses and very little money changed hands. My older daughter, Stephanie, now happily married, the mother of a comely infant, Callie, studied her wristwatch and predicted, "I bet you two start screwing each other again in 2 years, 7 months, 16 days, 5 hours, and 32 minutes. My younger daughter, Naomi, now a college pre-med student aiming to be a pediatrician, said, "Dollars to donuts, Pop, that your relationship with Rachel is just beginning." "What is it with you and women?" my friend Yuri asked. "I'm hopelessly in love with her," I protested. "You know that. I can't erase her off my mind. I'm obsessed by her imagination, her emotional fervor, her energy, her intellectual dexterity. The sex with her is like a wonderful car crash that never ends. The vehicle just rolls over and over down on her. What can she possibly see in you?" my other friend Bubba said. "I'm a respectable writer," I said. "I have an uproarious sense of humor. Politically, I support all the right causes, both environmental and social. I love the outdoors, the alpine ridgetop, the Rio Grande Gorge, our high desert sagebrush mesas. I love movies and literature. I listen to Amy Goodman on NPR. At home, I do dishes and vacuum carpets. I take the laundry to Peralta's. I fix the roof and prune the apple tree. I'm civil to her boys when they come to visit us from Alaska and pass endless boring days chewing the rag about seals robbing sockeye from their gill nets while Indian fishing rights are keel hauling their vocations. I don't eat too much. I keep in shape, and in bed, I'm like an indefatigable conjugal warrior who's not afraid to manifest his feminine side. And furthermore, Jesus, you're a lost cause, Yuri said. An emotionally arrested person just like your literature, the epitome of ghost. When will you learn that infatuation is not intimacy even if it lasts for a decade? You have to travel beyond the need for perpetual thrill. You must calm down and prepare for the long haul. Love is not a 100-yard dash, it's a marathon. Relationships are hard work. Sex is not all it's cracked up to be. Read Portnoy's Complaint, or maybe even take the plunge and plow through Anna Karenina. It wouldn't hurt you to open a book, open a Flaubert tome either. Or maybe sink your teeth into Hedda Gabler or Jane Austen. Women are way more than Dolly Parton and Jane Mansfield. Did you ever read Strindberg or the Kreutzer Sonata? You might even approach a novel by Edith Wharton, or take a break from the paucity of your intellectual range and crack a tract by Hegel. Try some of his dialectical laws on Versailles, then push on to Hegel's and Marx with their materialistic view of history, which you claim to espouse even though you've never read Das Kapital or The Origin of the Family Private Property of the State. Bottom line, you are a shallow dilettante, an amateur Lothario. You even write pop fiction like a dilettante with little or no emotional depth. You describe the surface of things with a fancy schmancy vocabulary, but you never investigate underneath. I pity your offspring, their genetic roots. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, he replied. I'm only a third-rate adjunct professor in the University of Relationship Advice.